Hey guys, it's Talbot. Today's video is on probably one of the most complex topics I'll be going over in any video I can think of at this point, and that is caster positioning. Positioning is, in my opinion, the hardest part of understanding the game. There are so many factors that go into it, and some games I still have no idea what I want to do to position myself, but every game I try to improve it, and I'd say positioning has the greatest impact on gameplay. There are some healers I play with, like some druids for example, who like to displace your beast in and get cyclones off, while there are other healers I play with who like to sit back and play defensive. It's really hard to tell you which is the most effective strategy in terms of playing defensive or offensive, but I'll give you a little mix of both in this video. By the end of this, you'll have a better understanding of how to position yourself as a caster. It doesn't matter if you're Warlock, Mage, Ele Shaman, Boomkin, or Shadow Priest, these tips are universal. Once you understand how to position yourself better, you'll feel a significant improvement in your understanding of defensive and offensive positioning, giving you a better chance to win Arena. Even as a melee or healer, you'll be able to identify when your opponents are going on the aggressive or on the defensive based on their caster's positioning. First topic I want to go over is being in the open versus being near a pillar. There is no right or wrong here. There are disadvantages and advantages for both being in the open and being near a pillar. Let's go over the advantages of being near a pillar. First, the obvious, you have the opportunity to line of sight casters. So if someone is casting a spell on you, you can walk behind the pillar and avoid it. This is very useful, and one of the main points of Arena is using these pillars to do that. There is at least one pillar type structure on every map in the game, so you can use this to your advantage on any map. Melee are also unable to use gap closers on you while you're line of sighting, so if you want to avoid melee, duck behind the pillar and they can't get to you. There are also plenty of disadvantages to being near a pillar. One is when melee are training you, they have the opportunity to also use the pillar to line of sight your casts. So if you're trying to get lava bursts or vampiric touches or polymorphs off, they have the opportunity to just walk behind the pillar and then continue attacking you. This is really frustrating to deal with, so when melee are training you, sometimes you want to be in the open. Sometimes against enemy mages and druids, when you're using the pillar, you get rooted behind it, and your healer won't be able to dispel you, and then you can't attack anyone because everyone's out of line of sight. For the most part though, against casters, you want to be near a pillar so that you can dip in and out of the pole while attacking them and avoiding their casts. Next, I want to talk about the advantages of kiting people into the open. I think there's a big misconception with the WoW community that makes them really not want to kite people into the open because they're scared of dying. However, against melee teams, it is usually best to kite through the open because of this. Your partners cannot attack when you're running behind a pillar and kiting them all over the place. I've had to deal with this as a comp like Shadow Play where we don't have snares, and sometimes I'm running around the pillar trying to avoid damage and my teammates can't do anything because they're chasing the people who are chasing me around in circles, and it's never ending. So sometimes you have to stop and think, hey, if I was just running through the center of the map and still taking a lot of damage, if I can live that, then my teammates will be able to do a lot more, and they'll be under a lot more pressure, and then maybe they won't chase me around so much. Once I realized the effectiveness of this strategy, I've been using it a lot against melee teams. A lot of the compositions I play as a caster are with another caster, so if I'm running through the center or just running into the open in general, the other caster is so much happier with me because they're able to just spam cast into them, do a lot of damage, and still able to CC the healer. This may sound really scary and silly at first, and you'll probably die a few times trying this, but once you understand that if they're taking a lot of damage, they have to run away from you and they can't chase you anymore, then you'll see the effectiveness of the strategy really shine. That strat does not always work though. The obvious disadvantage of running through the open is just dying. Like sometimes I'm trying to cut through the open to allow my buddy to cast, and I just take too much damage and I'm dead before I know it. You can't really avoid these situations happening if you're just trying the strategy out, so at first you will die a lot, and you need to spend time figuring this out, because if you can cut through the open, it is really effective. But otherwise, you're going to have to stick to the pillar, or you're going to have to get a Warlock in your team for Gateway. If you do have a Warlock in your team, or you're a Warlock yourself, you can use pillars to line of sight melee or casters, and once they get to you, you can use your Gateway to go across the map, and use the other side of the map to line of sight. This pulls them across the map, and you can cast on them and have your partner cast on them, and it's really effective for combining both using the pillar and cutting through the open. The next topic I want to go over is defensive positioning. There are two criteria, I'd say, to define defensive positioning. One, your healer is close by to you, so they're on the pillar behind you or you're on top of them. Two, your opponent's healer is on the other side of the map, either behind the pillar or just in the open, it doesn't matter, just really far away from you. Defensive positioning is kind of like a passive way to play the game. You're going to sit back by your healer and try to protect them from being CC'd, and if you're going to win games like this, if you're able to sit back by your healer and not use too much CC on the healer and still win, then it is the best way to play. You have a lot less chance of dying, and your healer will have no trouble healing you. Playing so defensive also makes it so that the other team has to push into your team on your side of the map to take you down, which brings them into the open and allows you to get cast off on them. Most of the time though, you won't be able to sit defensively near your healer the whole game and then win. You're going to have to push in at some point to get CC in the healer and go from there. So that leads us into offensive positioning. This is where the true casters shine and what defines good casters, in my opinion. If you have good offensive positioning and know how to combine that with good defensive positioning, you will be a great caster. The best casters always know when to push in at the right times and always land their CC perfectly on the healer and are able to get out successfully. So let's define what offensive positioning is before we start. Again, there's two criteria for what defines this. One, you're pushing in towards the healer, either to land CC on them or attempt to kill them. And two, your opponents and you are really close by, but leaves your healer with rough positioning. So that means you're either pushed up to their side of the map between two pillars, or on their side of Ruins of Lordaeron, for example. But no matter what, if you're in offensive positioning, your healer is going to have a tough time healing you because they have nowhere good to LOS all of a sudden. Like I was saying, if you aren't able to sit back defensively and use very little CC in the healer to win the game, then you're going to have to use offensive positioning at some point. Crowd controlling the enemy healer is a very important part of Arena, so definitely try to get used to offensive positioning. When you're moving into an offensive position, you have to be really aware of where your healer is. Most of the time, you want to get behind the pillar where the other healer is, get your CC off, and then get out. If you stay there for too long, your healer will have no chance to heal you, and you'll be stuck there and have to use cooldowns or even die there. I feel like I've only touched upon the surface of caster positioning with this video, so I'm going to be doing more in-depth analysis on each map with more videos, so if you're interested in more information on this, you can check those out. Before we close the video out, I just want to do a quick summary, as always, of what we went over so far. First, we went over being by a pillar versus being in the open. Generally, as a caster, you want to kite melee into the open and use a pillar against casters. Sometimes if melee do too much damage to you, you will need to use pillars though. We also talked about offensive versus defensive positioning. If you can win games with defensive positioning, then do that. But most of the time, you're going to have to get aggressive and run up and get CC on the healer, or even try to kill the healer. I really hope you guys got something out of this video. This is one of my favorite topics in WoW, and it's something I always try to think about when I'm playing Arena. Like I said too, I'm going to be making quite a few more videos on this topic on certain maps, so be sure to check those out as well. If you have any questions or concerns, leave a comment, and if you enjoyed this video, upvote it. Thanks for watching, guys.